Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Friday, October 10, 2025. The White House Budget Office Director Russell Vought announces on X that federal worker layoffs have begun, with the federal government shutdown now 10 days old and on a path to continue at least through the weekend. An OMB spokesperson telling media outlets can confirm RIFs have begun and they are substantial. These are RIFs, not furloughs, referring to reduction in force. Conservative commentator Benny Johnson says the Democratic Party is mainstreaming violence as a political tool, as he appears with Attorney General Pam Bondi to announce federal charges against the man who mailed a death threat to him and his family. The Senate defeats an amendment from Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois to limit President Donald Trump's power to deploy National Guard troops to Chicago and other cities in the name of supporting law enforcement to fight crime and ICE agents carrying out immigration raids. Venezuela's opposition leader wins the Nobel Peace Prize, and the chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee is asked about President Trump visibly campaigning for the award. First Lady Melania Trump says she has a regular communications channel with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and it's helped reunite children separated from their families during the war in Ukraine. And former Congresswoman and Congressional Black Caucus Chair Carolyn Kilpatrick, Democrat of Michigan, has died. Detroit News calling her the matriarch of a Detroit political family. CBS News writing, what to know on day 10 of the government shutdown. And these are some of the bullet points. OMB Director Russ Vought said the Trump administration has started handing out reduction in force notices to federal workers, writing on X, the RIFs have begun. Vought told Republican lawmakers after the shutdown began that reductions in force, a government term for layoffs, would begin within a couple of days. Several federal agencies have confirmed that they are sending out RIF notices, but it's not clear whether anybody has been fired yet or if the RIFs refer to new layoffs or to federal employees who have been furloughed since the beginning of the shutdown. House Speaker Mike Johnson said we're not in a good mood, as he noted Friday marks the first day that federal workers will not receive their full paychecks since the shutdown began on October 1st. The continued stalemate also makes it highly likely members of the military will miss their next paycheck, expected to arrive on October 15th. And this from CBS News as well. There's been a little movement toward ending the government shutdown in recent days after the Senate rejected motions to advance Democratic and Republican-backed spending bills for a seventh time Thursday and left town until Tuesday afternoon. The Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, did hold a news conference today, joined by Speaker Johnson.
Leader Chuck Schumer may think that every day that goes by, the shutdown gets better for the political prospects of the Democrats, but every day that it goes by, it gets a lot worse for the American people. Now, Democrats, senators might start to feel that a little bit personally when they try to fly out of airports and you see some of the impacts that are already occurring with respect to TSA and air traffic control. And families around the country are already seeing the impacts, and it's about to get a whole lot worse. Because we just needed 5 more votes, 5 more Democrat votes that the Democrats wouldn't give us yesterday, the American people are going to miss a lot more and feel a lot more pain and miss a lot more paychecks in the very near future. So shame on the Democrats. Shame on the Democrats for doing this to the American people. I mean, look at that. Really? Every day gets better for us? Every day gets better for us. That's their thought about what this shutdown means. So shame on the Democrats for what they're doing to the American people. Republicans want our troops to get paid. We want our traffic controllers to get paid. We want our TSA agents to get paid. We want our border control agents to get paid. And we have voted that way now in the United States Senate 7 times to open up the government. Democrats in the Senate are the last hurdle to getting the government open again and the American people back to work. But what? Instead, they've decided to pander to their far-left activist base who are cheering what's going on here. And the Democrats tend to be so afraid, I guess is the only thing, or running scared from that far-left activist base, that they are willing to put that ahead of what's in the best interest of the American people.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, at a news conference today on Capitol Hill with the House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana. The Senate did not hold votes today and will not be in for business on Monday, a federal holiday. Senate next meets Tuesday, October 14th. The House has not been in session for legislative business for the past 2 weeks, and Speaker Johnson said today he will not call members back to Washington until the federal government reopens. The House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, met with reporters today in the Capitol building.
The government has been shut down for 10 days. Our men and women in uniform and hardworking federal employees are working without pay. Donald Trump can find the time to play golf, but he can't be bothered negotiating a bipartisan agreement to reopen the government and address the health care crisis that they've created. And House Republicans remain on vacation for 3 weeks. The American people are sick and tired of the chaos, crisis, and confusion that has been visited upon the country by Donald Trump and Republican complete control of Congress. As Democrats, our position remains very clear. We will sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, here at the Capitol or back at the White House to reopen the government, pay our federal employees, enact a spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people, and at the same time, address the Republican health care crisis that is devastating the American people. Question?
The president, you have said, should be involved with negotiations. He is headed out of the country. Do you have any sense of any negotiations happening or what sort of timeline will be worked on and any plea that you have for the president?
Donald Trump's strategy during this government shutdown that he has created has been to play golf and issue deepfake videos. Mike Johnson's strategy is to keep House Republicans on vacation. John Thune's strategy is to continue to do the same partisan thing over and over and over again and expect different results. That's legislative insanity. Our plea to our Republican colleagues is get serious about reopening the government. Let's have a conversation so we can find a bipartisan path forward to do the things that are necessary in a spending agreement to actually improve the quality of life of the American people and address the health care crisis that they've created, including by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. That's what we need to do right now so that tens of millions of Americans don't experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles. That's going to bankrupt them or deprive them of the health care that they need.
U.S. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, meeting with reporters today after his news conference. The director of the Office of Management and Budget at the White House, Russ Vought, sending out a tweet. The rifts have begun, referring to the reductions in force, the layoffs of federal workers. Federal News Network writing that several agencies have confirmed they are sending new RIF notices to employees. A spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services confirmed the agency has sent RIF notices to some of its furloughed employees. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson said RIFs will target employees at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. The spokesperson saying RIFs will be occurring at CISA. During the last administration, CISA was focused on censorship, branding, and electioneering. This is part of getting CISA back on mission. And a spokesperson from the Education Department said in a statement that its employees will be impacted by the RIF. That was reporting from Federal News Network. Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, the Appropriations Committee chair, putting out a statement. I strongly oppose OMB Director Russ Vought's attempt to permanently lay off federal workers who have been furloughed due to a completely unnecessary government shutdown caused by Senator Schumer. Regardless of whether federal employees have been working without pay or have been furloughed, their work is incredibly important to serving the public. Arbitrary layoffs result in a lack of sufficient personnel needed to conduct the mission of the agency and to deliver essential programs and cause harm to families in Maine and throughout our country. That statement from Republican Senator Susan Collins. And New York Times article has this: President Trump has already dismissed thousands of civil servants in his second term, but the firings that began Friday may be unlawful or unnecessary, according to a wide range of budget experts, legal scholars, and union officials. This is Washington Today. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent begins a Democracy Now! Article announced the U.S. has begun implementing parts of a bailout for Argentina by finalizing a $20 billion currency swap with Argentina's central bank. Argentina's far-right president is an ally of President Trump. On Thursday, 8 Democratic senators introduced a bill that would prevent the Treasury Department from rescuing Argentina's economy. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts said it is inexplicable that President Trump is propping up a foreign government while he shuts down our own. That was from Democracy Now! The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was on Fox News Thursday night answering questions about this.
Explain to our viewers what is going on with Argentina, because the U.S. Treasury today directly purchased Argentine pesos and finalized this $20 billion currency swap framework with Argentina's central bank. So the intent, I guess, is to provide assistance from the Latin American country's economic turmoil. It's clear how Argentina benefits from this deal. What do we get out of it?
We get a lot out of it. Argentina is a beacon in Latin America. President Milei has done the right thing. He is trying to break 100 years of a bad cycle in Argentina. He is also a great ally for the U.S. He'll be coming to the Oval Office next Tuesday, and he is committed to getting China out of Argentina. They're all over the place in Latin America. And when people say to me, how is this not America first? I'll tell you why it's not. Do you want to be shooting at more gunboats like in Venezuela? We do not want a failed state.
So this isn't a bailout?
Sorry, it's not a bailout at all. There's no money being transferred. The ESF has never lost money. It's not going to lose money here. I was in the investment business, mostly currencies, for 40 years. You're supposed to buy low, sell high, and the Argentine peso is undervalued. We're going to have an election in Argentina the 26th of this month. We think President Milei will do quite well, and he is putting the Peronist path behind them. And people in the U.S., especially on the left, they are willing to. Senator Warren tried to put a bill in front of the Senate that the Exchange Stabilization Fund could not bail out Argentina, which I think is rich because she's an American Peronist. Don't cry for me, Massachusetts. And when Joe Biden was in office, what was their idea of foreign aid? It was circumcisions in Malawi and drag shows in Central America.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Fox News Thursday night. President Donald Trump begins an NBC News article on Friday, threatened a massive increase in tariffs on Chinese products, rocking markets and adding a fresh dose of uncertainty into trade relations between the world's largest economies. China has become, quote, very hostile on trade matters, Trump said in a bombshell Truth Social post. He went on, I was to meet President Xi in 2 weeks at APEC in South Korea, but now there seems to be no reason to do so. The leaders were expected to announce a full-fledged trade deal at the meeting. On Thursday, China announced a series of new limits on the trade of rare earths and technologies related to them. That was from NBC News. And Wall Street reaction, the Dow down 878, NASDAQ down 820, S&P down 182. CNBC reporting the Labor Department will bring back staff to work on a key consumer inflation report despite the ongoing federal government shutdown, CNBC has learned. The department's Bureau of Labor Statistics will promptly resume work on September's Consumer Price Index data, a White House official said. The report will come out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern on October 24th, 9 days after it was originally scheduled, according to BLS, reporting from CNBC. This is Washington Today. Article at the Daily Mail, a man threatened conservative influencer Benny Johnson as part of an Antifa plot to emulate Charlie Kirk's assassination, Pam Bondi said at a fiery press conference Friday. The Attorney General announced charges against a suspect named as George Isbell Jr. as part of a White House crackdown on political violence. Isbell will be prosecuted in connection to threatening communications mailed to Johnson and his wife Kate, which talked about wanting to orphan their children and strangling Johnson with an American flag. Johnson commands a following of over 4 million on X and is one of the most outspoken conservative commentators on social media, known for rubbing shoulders with Donald Trump and other influential MAGA stars. Reporting from the Daily Mail, Attorney General Bondi spoke at a news conference in Tampa, Florida at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
I'm here today to talk about similar threats that were made against Benny Johnson and his wife, Kate. Benny's a well-known media personality, carrying a message very similar to Charlie's, grounded largely in faith and love of country. Just days after Charlie's assassination, Benny received a letter at his home where he and Kate are raising their beautiful, beautiful young family. The author of this letter made it very clear that he hated Benny because of his views, and he wanted Benny dead. This was a coward hiding behind a keyboard who thought he could get away with this. That's why we're standing up here today. You are not going to get away with threatening people in this way. And I'm proud to announce that we have arrested the author of this letter. George Isbell Jr. was taken into custody this morning, and we are charging him federally with mailing threatening communications. It is a crime, and if convicted, he is going to prison. This was incredible teamwork. Benny called me right away. Chief Burkall, thank you. You were on it right away. Matt Fodor and all the FBI agents. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Kehoe. All of the U.S. Postal Service, FBI, state and local law enforcement working together. This is what it's about. And we are going to catch you if you think you can do something like this. We don't care if you're across the country in California. We will find you, we will arrest you, we will extradite you, and we will bring you to justice. We cannot allow this political violence to continue any longer. This arrest will serve as a reminder to many. Do not do this. We will find you.
Attorney General Pam Bondi at a news conference in Tampa, Florida. Benny Johnson also spoke, describing the threats against him and his family and linking them to other recent violence and threats of violence, blaming it all on the Democratic Party.
The individual who wrote me described why he wanted me dead. I was a white, cis, Christian Trump supporter. They described in great detail how I would be killed in an open field just like Charlie, how much blood would come out of my head and neck when it was blown off. This individual described orphaning my 4 beautiful children and widowing my wife with great joy. You might want to say, another left-wing radical, another extremist. And to that, I would like to direct your attention to the state of Virginia, where Democrats have nominated and are about to vote for the chief law enforcement officer in that state, a man who has done the exact same thing, an individual who's calling for the assassination by bullets of Republicans that he disagrees with. The killing of their children, the slaughtering of, as he says, little fascists. Are my 4 innocent, beautiful children little fascists? Violence has been mainstreamed by the Democrat Party. It is not extremist, it is mainstream. And we need a moment of reckoning here. This has to stop. This cycle must end.
Benny Johnson, conservative commentator, at a news conference in Tampa, Florida, with Attorney General Pam Bondi and the U.S. Attorney Gregory Kehoe, who said the suspect sent the threatening letter to the Johnson home from San Diego and left fingerprints on it, which led to his arrest. Benny Johnson mentioned Jay Jones, a Democrat running for Virginia Attorney General. Jay Jones sent text in 2022 about former Republican Virginia House Speaker Todd Gilbert. Some of the text read, 3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. This was a topic at Virginia's gubernatorial debate Thursday night between the Democratic nominee, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, and the Republican nominee, Winsome Earl Sears, the Commonwealth's lieutenant governor. The debate was at Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia. First, Abigail Spanberger.
The comments that Jay Jones made are absolutely abhorrent. I denounced them when I learned of them, and I will denounce them every opportunity I get. As a mother, as a public servant, as a candidate for governor, I denounce them. And it is important that candidates always denounce violence on no matter which side of the aisle. Violence, violent rhetoric, we should always be focused and forceful in our denouncement of it.
The question is, are you going to tell him to get his
importantly, my opponent, unfortunately, only denounces violence when her side is the target.
Don't
I
lie
hope
like that,
into the
Abigail.
future, she will endeavor to denounce violent rhetoric and violence no matter who the victim. And tonight, Lieutenant Governor Earl Sears, I will say, you routinely referred to me as your enemy.
Just please give her a chance to
You routinely
respond.
refer to me as your enemy. I'm not your enemy. You are not my enemy. We are political opponents, and tonight voters are here to listen to the policy differences that we have. So as we move forward, we must continue to set a good example for all of our children.
Abigail Spanberger, Democratic nominee for Virginia governor at Thursday night's debate. The Republican nominee for governor, Winsome Earl Sears, was also asked about Virginia Attorney General nominee Jay Jones's texts and President Donald Trump's recent remarks at the memorial of assassinated conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
While there is no equivalency, this next example does speak to the divided nature of our country. During the Charlie Kirk memorial, President Trump said, quote, "I hate my opponent and I don't want the best for them." Is there a place for that kind of political speech? You have 60 seconds.
Well, I think, as everybody knows, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian before I'm a Republican, and I'm required to forgive people. And it's hard sometimes when somebody has abused you, etc., but it's something you must do, because not to forgive is almost like, as someone said, you drink poison thinking that it's going to affect the other person. And I want to live a decent life, and I don't want to not have peace in my life. And so as I've said before, I would not say that. So that's why I'm wondering why my opponent won't say, beyond it's abhorrent and disgusting, why she won't say it is not okay and that he must leave the race, because Jay Jones advocated the murder, Abigail, the murder of a man, a former speaker, as well as his children who were 2 and 5 years old. You have little girls. What would it take him pulling the trigger? Is that what would do it? And then you would say he needs to get out of the race? Abigail, you have nothing to say? Abigail, what if he said it about your 3 children? Is that when you would say he should get out of the race, Abigail?
Winsome Earl Sears, Republican nominee for Virginia governor, debating the Democratic nominee, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, Thursday night at Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia. You can find the video of the full debate, runs an hour, at our video library, cspan.org. WJLA-TV in Washington reporting this week that new polling from the Republican Attorneys General Association, or RAGA, released exclusively to 7 News, shows Jones' support among likely Virginia voters has dropped since news broke of Jones's violent texts. From the New York Times, a federal judge in Illinois issued a temporary restraining order on Thursday evening blocking the Trump administration's deployment of National Guard troops in the Chicago area days after the president called up soldiers over the Democratic governor's objection. The judge, April M. Perry, a Biden appointee, said in court that I have seen no credible evidence that there is a danger of a rebellion in the state of Illinois, rejecting one of the administration's stated reasons for the deployment. Judge Perry's decision came after a lengthy hearing in federal district court in downtown Chicago, about 13 miles from an immigration and customs enforcement facility in the western suburbs where members of the Texas National Guard were spotted earlier on Thursday. In addition to the Texas troops sent to Illinois, the president also placed members of the Illinois National Guard under federal command. Reporting from the New York Times, Senator Tammy Duckworth, Democrat of Illinois, offered an amendment Thursday night on the Senate floor in Washington to the defense authorization bill being debated to limit federal deployment of National Guard troops. It was voted down by the Senate. Here is the debate before the vote. Senator Duckworth and Senator Kevin Cramer, Republican of North Dakota.
In the last few months, Madam President, we've seen President Trump force military troops uninvited into American cities, first into Los Angeles, then our nation's capital, and now into Chicago. Let's be clear. Ordering our troops to intimidate the very Americans they were willing to risk their lives to protect does nothing to make our nation stronger. It is just another move straight out of the authoritarian 101 playbook. Can I have order in the chamber?
Senate will come to order.
A move that tramples on civil rights, instills fear among Americans of our heroes in uniform, and distracts our troops from their core mission of keeping America safe from the actual adversaries who wish to do us harm. Our National Guardsmen signed up to serve and protect this country, not to protect one man's thin skin. That is why today I am introducing a provision that would reduce misuse of the military for non-military purposes. It would install common sense congressional oversight by requiring Congress approve any redirection of expensive military assets to support law enforcement for longer than 30 days. This is essential to protect against civil rights abuse, including using military bases for detentions or providing DoD surveillance equipment to support policing on U.S. soil. To be clear, my provision would allow states facing reasonable crises that overwhelm their capacities, from natural disasters to public health emergencies, to benefit from a surge in military logistical support for a month. But it would also help ensure that Americans' elected representatives, not a wannabe dictator, get to decide whether burning military readiness in this way merits such extraordinary measures. If my colleagues on the other side of the aisle care about respecting our troops as much as they claim to, they have no choice but to join me in voting yes.
Madam President.
Senator from North Dakota.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, protecting the American people and their property is fundamental to the government. In fact, it's a core principle and responsibility of the federal government. And I see no need or any good reason to remove the tools that the president has to do exactly that, to protect people and property. Use of our military to support, not to become law enforcement, but to support local law enforcement is legal. President Trump has proven it can be effective. And I think that just because you don't like the current president is not a reason to make dramatic changes to the laws to restrict him from doing the very thing he promised he'd do when he ran for the office. And I oppose the amendment and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Senator Kevin Cramer, Republican of North Dakota, and Senator Tammy Duckworth, Democrat of Illinois, on the Senate floor Thursday night. The Duckworth amendment was defeated by a vote of 46 to 52. Another amendment to this National Defense Authorization Act, offered by Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democrat of Maryland, would have mandated that a deployment of troops to support law enforcement in any state must be approved by that state's governor or by the District of Columbia mayor. That failed by a 47 to 50 vote. These amendments were offered to the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, which, after all the amendments were voted on, passed late Thursday night, 77 to 20. Roll call reporting that the Senate version is $914 billion. The House passed version is $883 billion. So the next step is a conference committee to reach a single final version that can pass both chambers and be signed into law by President Donald Trump. Washington Today continues in a moment.
America marks 250 years, and C-SPAN is there to commemorate every moment, from the signing of the Declaration of Independence to the voices shaping our nation's future. We bring you unprecedented all-platform coverage, exploring the stories, sights, and spirit that make up America. Join us for remarkable coast-to-coast coverage celebrating our nation's journey like no other network can. America 250. Over a year of historic moments, only on the C-SPAN networks.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. The White House has denounced the Norwegian Nobel Committee's decision to award the Nobel Peace Prize to someone other than Donald Trump. That's the first line of an article by The Guardian. It goes on, following Friday's announcement that the Venezuelan opposition politician Maria Corina Machado had been awarded the prize, senior aides to the U.S. president attacked the Norwegian committee as politicized, while Norway braced itself for a potential diplomatic response from the White House. The Nobel Committee proved they place politics over peace, wrote Stephen Chung, a Trump aide and the White House's director of communications. Trump will, quote, continue making peace deals, ending wars, and saving lives. He has the heart of a humanitarian, and there will never be anyone like him who can move mountains with the sheer force of his will. Reporting from The Guardian. The chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Jørgen Watne Friednes, made the announcement in Oslo.
The Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 goes to a brave and committed champion of peace, to a woman who keeps the flame of democracy burning amidst a growing darkness. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to Maria Corina Machado. She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. As the leader of the democratic forces in Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado is one of the most extraordinary examples of civilian courage in Latin America in recent times. Ms. Machado has been a key unifying figure in a political opposition that was once deeply divided, an opposition that found common ground in the demand for free election and representative government. This is precisely what lies at the heart of democracy, our shared willingness to defend the principles of popular rule, even though we disagree. At a time when democracy is under threat, it is more important than ever to defend this common ground.
Chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Jørgen Watne Friednes, in Oslo. After the opening statement, he took reporters' questions, and one was about Donald Trump.
U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly said he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize and he'd like to have it. He even said that it would be an insult to the United States if he doesn't get it. What does as the chairman of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, think of this, and how has this campaign-like activity by the president and his supporters, domestically and internationally, affected the deliberations and the thinking in the committee?
In the long history of the Nobel Peace Prize, I think this committee have seen any type of campaign, media attention. We receive thousands and thousands of letters every year of people wanting to say what for them leads to peace. This committee sits in a room filled with the portraits of all laureates, and that room is filled with both courage and integrity. So we base only our decision on the work and the will of Alfred Nobel.
Chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Jørgen Watne Friednes, in Oslo. The Peace Prize winner this year, Venezuelan opposition politician Maria Corina Machado, wrote on X that today more than ever we count on President Trump, the people of the United States, the peoples of Latin America, and the democratic nations of the world as our principal allies to achieve freedom and democracy. And I dedicate this prize to the suffering people of Venezuela and to President Trump for his decisive support of our cause. President Trump reposted that on Truth Social. Fox News writing, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, announced Friday that the Pentagon has agreed to host a new Qatari Emery Air Force facility in Idaho, saying that the nation has played a core part in securing the Gaza peace deal. Hegseth made the announcement during an enhanced cordon arrival ceremony at the Pentagon for Qatar's Minister of Defense, Saud bin Abdulrahman Al Thani. The new base will host Qatari F-15 fighter jets and pilots, enabling joint training operations with U.S. forces. That reporting from Fox News, here's Secretary Hegseth at the Pentagon.
It's been an interesting couple of weeks, I will say. Yes, just two remarks. Yes. We're glad to welcome you here. We're grateful for the strong partnership that we have, the way you support our troops at LUD, Your Excellency, the line of communication we've had together, which has been robust ever since the beginning of this administration, and then especially since the events that have transpired over the last month. We want to thank you. I also want to thank you for the release of the Americans detained in Afghanistan. The American Amir Amiri on September 28th. Qatar mediated that, just like you have been a core part of what has unfolded in Gaza. A historic moment. No one other than President Trump could have achieved the peace that what we believe will be a lasting peace in Gaza. And Qatar played a substantial role from the beginning, working with our folks to ensure that came about. So I want to thank you for that historic piece. We look forward to joining the president as that gets, it's already been delivered, but as that's formally signed as well. And I'm also proud that today we're announcing, we're signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at the Mountain Home Air Base in Idaho. The location will be host a contingent of Qatari F-15s and pilots to enhance our combined training, increase lethality, interoperability. It's just another example of our partnership. And I hope you know, Your Excellency, that you can count on us. We saw in Midnight Hammer, in those moments, when we needed support in the region, that Qatar was there without a doubt, without a blink. And that has meant a great deal. I've had the opportunity to see that firsthand operationally. I want to thank you. I want to thank your country for that, for hosting our troops. And it's wonderful to welcome you to the Pentagon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon with the Qatari Minister of Defense. AP writes that tens of thousands of Palestinians headed back to the heavily destroyed northern Gaza Strip on Friday as a U.S.-brokered ceasefire came into effect in a deal that raised hopes for ending the Israel-Hamas war. All the remaining hostages were set to be released within days. Politico writes that Senate Republicans on Thursday rebuffed a Democratic-led effort to block funding for President Donald Trump to convert a gifted Qatari jetliner into Air Force One. The amendment was offered by the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, to the National Defense Authorization Act. You will hear Senator Schumer on the Senate floor, followed by opposition from Republican Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska.
Back in May, President Trump accepted the largest foreign gift to an American president in modern history, a $400 million luxury Boeing 747 for use as Air Force One. It's outrageous that President Trump wants to fly around the world like a king while Americans are getting hammered by tariffs, paying more for health care, groceries, rents, electricity. Some say this plane was gifted and it didn't cost the U.S. anything, but make no mistake about it. Merely retrofitting this foreign-owned luxury jet to make it fully operational will cost hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars. That's money that shouldn't be wasted. So today I have an amendment that will make sure not a penny of taxpayer dollars provided in this NDAA will go to any remodeling or maintenance of the president's foreign-owned Air Force One. It would prohibit funds authorized by this bill from being diverted for procurement, modification, restoration, or maintenance of an aircraft previously owned by a foreign government for the purpose of providing a presidential airlift. And it would ensure the security and continued liability of the Air Force One fleet. Republicans like to talk about eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Spending even a penny of taxpayer dollars on retrofitting this luxury is about as wasteful as it gets. I urge my Republican colleagues who care about spending taxpayer dollars responsibly to support this amendment. Yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Nebraska.
Madam President, I rise in opposition to this amendment because it would have a significant negative effects on our U.S. nuclear deterrent. In addition to the obvious jab at President Trump, the way the amendment is drafted would affect one of our military's most important programs, the Survivable Air Operations Center, otherwise known as the Doomsday Plane. This aircraft program is crucial to ensuring command and control for the president if we are attacked with nuclear weapons. It is an important part of our nuclear deterrent. The program purchased a Boeing 747 aircraft from Korean Air, and thus this program would be unable to spend appropriated money this year if this amendment passes. For those reasons, I urge a no vote.
Republican Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska, responding to an amendment from the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, Thursday night to the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. The amendment was voted down 46-50. U.S. First Lady Melania Trump said today that she and Russian President Vladimir Putin have had an open channel of communication about children impacted by the war in Ukraine, and that 8 children have been reunited with their families in the past 24 hours. The First Lady spoke at the White House about what has happened since she asked President Trump to hand-deliver a letter to President Putin when the two met in Alaska, and then President Putin responded.
For the past 3 months, both sides have participated in several back-channel meetings and calls, all in good faith. We have agreed to cooperate with each other for the benefit of all people involved in this war. My representative has been working directly with President Putin's team to ensure the safe reunification of children with their families between Russia and Ukraine. In fact, 8 children have been rejoined with their families during the past 24 hours. Each child has lived in turmoil because of the war in Ukraine. 3 were separated from their parents and displaced to the Russian Federation because of frontline fighting. The other 5 were separated from family members across borders because of the conflict, including one young girl who has now been reunited from Ukraine to Russia. I have learned a lot about this matter during the past 3 months. Russia has demonstrated a willingness to disclose objective and detailed information reflective for the current situation. The Russian Federation provided biographies and photographs of each child involved in this week's reunification, along with an overview of the social, medical, and psychological services afforded to the Ukrainian children. Further, I was provided a detailed report which verified the identities and circumstances of these 8 individuals. The U.S. government confirmed the facts contained within this document are accurate. It is important to note the original verification report was jointly prepared by the Commissioner of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine for Human Rights and Office of the Russian Presidential Commissioner for Children's Rights. As First Lady, this is an important initiative for me. It is built on shared purpose and lasting impact. My ongoing mission is twofold: to prioritize, to optimize a transparent, free-flow exchange of health-related information surrounding all children who have fell victim to this war, and to facilitate the regular reunification of children with their families until each individual returns home.
First Lady Melania Trump at the White House. A Reuters article about her remarks today includes this: Ukraine has called the abductions of tens of thousands of its children to Russia or Russian-occupied territory without the consent of family or guardians a war crime that meets the United Nations treaty definition of genocide. Previously, Moscow has said it had been protecting vulnerable children from a war zone. That was from the Reuters article. And this is Washington Today. Detroit News writes that former U.S. Congresswoman Carolyn Kilpatrick, the matriarch of a Detroit political family whose power was dimmed by her son's corruption scandal, died Tuesday following a long illness, family and friends said. She was 80. The mother of former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick served 7 terms in Congress and 9 terms in the Michigan House of Representatives as a Democrat. She was denied an 8th term in Congress in 2010, losing a Democratic primary to then State Senator Hanson Clark, 2 years after Kwame Kilpatrick left office in a scandal that would send him to prison. Reporting from the Detroit News. Congresswoman Kilpatrick was chair of the Congressional Black Caucus in 2008 when she spoke on Capitol Hill at a ceremony marking the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Dr. King and his wisdom and his courage is the reason we have 43 members today and growing. We have 6,000 members of the African American community who are local and state elected officials. Dr. King Martin is responsible, his courage. 40 years ago, Dr. King fought for jobs, housing, health care. Today, we fight for those very same things, all of us, members of Congress and leaders and men and women and children all over this great nation of ours. Where were you 40 years ago? What will you do today that we might build a better nation right here on earth? Today is a glorious day that the Lord has made. This beautiful rotunda just reminds us of how great our nation is. Will you sacrifice? Will you build? Will you dedicate your life, as Dr. King did, that our nation might rise with power and glory once again?
Congresswoman Carolyn Kilpatrick, Democrat of Michigan, in 2008 at a ceremony in the U.S. Capitol building on the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. From the C-SPAN video library, she has died at the age of 80. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Democrat of Michigan, writing on X, "I am deeply saddened by the passing of Congresswoman Carolyn Kilpatrick, former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. She was a fearless advocate, devoted public servant, and unwavering voice for Detroiters. May her legacy live on in the lives she touched and the positive impact she made on our communities." Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Have a good night and weekend.